And now I would like to ask Kenneth, who is Senior Security Analyst in SAP Group, to say something about what is important from SAP point of view, and not only. You have experience, I'm sure, not only from SAP, but also from other field. So I hope to hear very, very interesting things which can motivate our students for creating a very nice proposal for the European Defence Challenge. Kenneth, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As you said, I've been doing other things. I've been at Saab for roughly a year. I started in September last year. And before that, I worked at the security service in Sweden, working as a head analyst at the counterintelligence department. So I chased spies for 8 years at the security service. And before that, I worked at the Swedish military intelligence, dealing mainly with the Russian problem, which we see on the daily news feeds, how that problem has evolved. I will talk a bit about my view, our view on security and how the world around us affects the defense industry, and trying to sort of explain it. Because as you talked about earlier about awareness, I think the key thing, the most important step you can take to increase security in a company is to increase the level of awareness, knowledge, and knowing about how the world around you looks like and how it develops, because it's in that world that we are operating. Just a few words about Saab. As Leonardo, we do a lot of cool things. We are operating in producing stuff for most military theaters, like airplanes, submarines, command and control systems, and different sorts of sensors and ground combat systems also. So we started off as a company that only dealt with airplanes, but over the decades we have evolved and doing things in much more arenas nowadays, and we have a lot of collaboration with other companies in Europe and other places in the world. But when looking at this picture, I think it's the first starting point, the most important thing is to think about what is it that we do as a defense industry. I think one easy answer to that question would be that we produce cool stuff and then we sell them. But I think the answer is much more complicated than that, because what we are doing in practical terms is these three things. What our customers is demanding, what they want is to have a stronger security political stance in their context. They want a higher military capability and societal resilience. That is what is demanded. And then we as defense industry delivers that in the forms of weapon systems or sensors or what we're talking about. I think this is very, very important to have this distinction between what we are actually doing. We are not just selling things. We are active component or partner in our customers' security political development and military capability development. So this because if you have this view on the defense industry's mission, I think the threat assessments and threat perspective comes much more naturally into our minds, and then we can sort of increase security much more. You really can't put Leonardo or Saab or any other defense industry alongside Scania or Jaguar or Mercedes or other companies, because working in the defense industry is a completely different ball game, really. So just a few words about the world we live in, and trying to just explain this. Just theoretically, we have a company called Canada Badaboom Industries Limited, who are producing military systems, and we sell things to a country called Middle Earth. And this is just the first easy thought about defense industry. We sell cool stuff to our customers. But what happens next is that we have a country called Mordor who is an enemy to Middle Earth, and they of course want to know what types of systems are Middle Earth buying from Kenneth, because they want to adapt their military stance and adapt their military capabilities to these new systems that Middle Earth is buying. So they are conducting intelligence operations against Middle Earth, of course, to know more about these new systems. But they are also conducting intelligence operations against my company, because we are the supplier of the system, supplier of the capabilities. So of course, there will be intelligence activities against the producer of the goods. But then we have a friendly neighboring country to Middle Earth called Numenor. They of course also want to know why is Middle Earth buying these new systems, what they're doing, and what can they do, and how will it sort of evolve in the future with new capabilities in these systems. So they might also conduct intelligence operations against Kenneth Bada-Boom Industries also, of course. They want to know more, just to have an awareness about their part of the world. And then we have Gimli Industries, who's just a competitor. They maybe want to take over the deal, maybe they want to underbid, or maybe want to compete against Kenneth Bada-Boom Industries. So they are conducting intelligence operations also against the first client country, the Middle Earth country, but also against my company also. So going from a very easy concept of just selling things, in this view, it becomes much, much more complicated, because we are in the business of security political decisions and military capability. And around all this, of course, we have a security political context, which is global, sort of the general sentiment globally regarding crises is financial, economy, political, and so on, and natural disasters maybe. So this is a very simplistic way of sort of describing what how the world looks in the defense industry. It's not that easy just to sell things. It gets pretty quickly very complicated. So just a few words on the security political context. I think that is important because it describes the world that we act in, and there are tons of text written about this. I usually use this one. It is from the ODNI, the top level in intelligence organizations in the United States. They have, I think, 57 intelligence services, but this is sort of the top synchronizing part of the intelligence service in the US. And they annually release a report, which is really, really good and quite short also, where they very briefly describes the endeavors for the American security, which is roughly the same for Western Europe and Eastern Europe also. So we can use a lot of this knowledge to sort of shape our understanding of the world. And in that report, they say that US or Europe will face an increasingly complex and interconnected global security environment. With a lot of more great power competition and conflict. We see that now in Ukraine, for instance, but also when we talk about China and Taiwan and other countries. We see competition and potential conflict between states. We see how different countries trying to demonstrate their capabilities and push their boundaries for what they can do. And also that they are trying to enhance and exercise their military, cyber, and other capabilities, continuously training and developing new capabilities, which is maybe in the longer run creates more of a tense situation. And I think that is something that we see also on a daily basis in the South China Sea, or in the Arctic regions, or in Europe or Eastern Europe, or around the Mediterranean and so on. Another organization that has written quite good text is from the Swedish SIGINT authorities, Signals Intelligence Authority in Sweden, who released a report this spring, talking about Sweden, of course, but it's just as valid for Europe as a whole, and more taking a stance toward the development in Ukraine. And it's very clear that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is the most serious security crisis since World War II. This is not small things, it's a big crisis. And this might risk the world to be thrown into an international crisis. And we see that people are dying of starvation in Africa because wheat from Ukraine can't be shipped in enough amounts to for instance, Africa. And I think the most important thing is that this war will not pass by. It's not a speed bump. We will live in a much more complicated world and in a world with a higher conflict level than we are used to. And this will go on for many years. It is a new world. I will come back to that later on, but I think this is very important to realize that the Russian invasion of Ukraine has changed fundamentally the European security order, which we as countries, but also as industry, have to adapt to and have to put security in place to shield us from or protect us from. And the dimensioning actors for defense industries are, of course, the two gentlemen to the right, of course. We often then name them hostile state actors because they have a malign intent. They want to steal stuff. They want to maybe use their industries as a political leverage of some sort. But then we also have competitors, which is mainly about competitors trying to steal business or underbid. But that is also a thing that we have to take care of within the industries. And especially in a world where we are collaborating much more with other partner companies, that we have to be really good at shielding and just collaborate about the things that we are about to collaborate on and nothing more, to reduce risk of spillover information. And then we have criminals, which is mainly cyber criminals, which is the dimensioning actor in the criminality world. And then we have different forms of activists, whether it be peace activists or terrorists or other forms of activists. But the dimensioning actor is states, countries, and especially hostile state actors. And what is it about them that makes them such a difficult target or such a difficult thing to counteract and protect ourselves from? It is because they have a lot of the things in this model. Since it's countries, they have a lot of resources. So whether it's personnel or money or other things, they have a lot of resources. They also have a lot of platforms. Platforms to operate from, for instance, to conduct intelligence operations. They can use embassies, set up companies, use compatriot organizations, that is cultural clubs, religious clubs, and other forms of clubs to use as platforms for intelligence collection. And also they have technology. They have specially developed technology just being designed or produced for extracting information. And it's not the things that you can buy in an ordinary shop. It's very tailor-made specific technologies that can be used. And on top of that, in a more strategic sense, they have also a legal framework. They have a legislation that gives them right to do a lot of things and sort of sets the scope for intelligence collection. They also have political support, which is that in many cases, the intelligence world and the political world are very connected. I think one good example of that is Vladimir Putin, who was the head of FSB, the Russian security service, and also worked at SVR or NKGB before that. He's a good example of the connecting between political world and intelligence world. And also they have time, which is, I think, a small world, but it's very important. Since we are talking about countries, they have perspectives that are much longer and far stretching than ordinary actors like criminals, maybe who thinks just half an hour in advance. Since we are talking about countries, maybe they can talk about decades in advance and see the side end state maybe 30 or 40 years from now. I think that is very important. And I have two examples of this. This is excerpts from the national intelligence law in China when we're talking about the legal things regarding state actors, and especially Article 7 has caught a lot of persons' attention over the years, where they say that any organization or citizen shall support, assist, and cooperate with state intelligence work. Here, the Chinese legislators demand that companies and Chinese individuals have to help the intelligence services in different ways to collect information. And this law isn't designed just to be functional within China mainland. This is globally, it can be used globally, since you can't really take away your own Chinese citizenship. It's theoretically possible, but you, in practical terms, can't do it. So this is valid for all Chinese persons living in all the world, which is interesting and also says a lot about our Chinese intelligence collection. And here we have another example of the time factor. I think to the left we have the Chinese program called Made in China 2025, where they have highlighted a bunch of sectors which they will be better at and trying to develop. And one important thing in this is, of course, using different forms of intelligence collection, whether it's cyber attacks or human intelligence or other forms of intelligence. But if you look at the bottom, there we see this is the Made in China is just one step. In 2035, the plan is to make China global manufacturing power, and by 2049 be a leading manufacturing superpower, combined with being a military superpower, surpassing United States in military might. So the Chinese are planning for 2049 as their desired end state, which is the 100-year anniversary of the creation of the Chinese state. And to the right, we have another definition of time, which is is old by now, the Cambridge 5, the Soviet spies operating in United Kingdom during World War II. They were recruited by KGB at university in Cambridge. And there, the Soviet intelligence services saw them as promising candidates for maybe one day becoming important senior members of the UK security political environment, which they also become. Kim Philby worked at MI6, if I remember correctly, and a few others worked at the foreign departments and so on, and worked for many years to recruiting or to delivering information to Soviets. So there are another aspect of the time component, that they saw promising candidates already at the university age and then help them develop into real spies. I think this is important, the time factor. So the threat, what is the threat really? Threat is usually comprising of three parts. It's capability, sort of the material means to do things. It could be a military capability or intelligence capability or industrial capability. And also we have intent, which is the political, more or less political decisions to do things. These two things, in capability and intent, we can't really affect, not as companies and maybe not as countries. Also maybe EU can affect intent and capability, maybe bigger countries can, but individual companies cannot. So they are exogenous in a sense. But then we have the third component, which is opportunity. That is the places and times to really do things. That is the one that we can affect, because the opportunities take place in our companies, in our countries. And the cleanest definition of security work is to make that top circle as small as possible. That is security. To make it as expensive and troublesome as possible for other countries to conduct intelligence operations against our companies. That is security. So everything is about reducing opportunities for our opponents, and especially throughout the company. It is not enough that senior management are aware of this. I think it's extremely important that everyone in the company, all the way out, have to be aware of the threats in the world around us, because our antagonists are looking for the weakest link. And I think one way to make sure all the links are strong is to educate and create awareness in the companies and talk about these things. So the opportunity is crucial when talking about security in the defense industry, and think about reducing opportunities. And that is why we do it in 3 different spheres or sectors in our companies. We have to increase physical security, which is about doors and fences and stuff like that. We have to increase personnel security, that is hiring people that can be trusted with secrets and don't make too many mistakes or have vulnerabilities that can be exploited by an intelligence organization. And we work with cyber and information security also, to ways to keep our information secure and safe, and that the information doesn't get any feet and run off to places where it shouldn't be. And this is extremely important, not only for us as companies, but also for our customers, our clients, because they in one way are handing over their secrets to a company. So they have to be sure that the industry is keeping the secrets safe and doing everything they can to in a way protect the customer country or customer client. So this is an important picture. Think opportunities when we talk about security. A side note, just to emphasize all of this, just a background. Rather quickly after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Swedish armed forces started to have press conferences. Before that, it was the Swedish Health Authority who had the COVID press conferences once every Thursday. And very quickly, the Swedish armed forces took over that slot in the timetable and talked about the war in Ukraine. And then they talked about the threat against the armed forces, the Swedish armed forces. And I think you can do roughly the same assessment regarding all the armed forces in Europe, really. And there they said that the intelligence threat against the Swedish armed forces is high, 4 on a 5-point scale, encompassing a lot of different methods to collect information. It could be SIGINT, that is signal intelligence, eavesdropping on radio waves and telecommunications, cyber attacks, human collection, which is recruiting spies and contacts, and then also technical close collection, which is signal intelligence really against computers and projectors and so on, and IT systems, which is very close to the target. They also said that the threat of subversion, that is disinformation and propaganda and ways to minimize the importance of senior leadership, has increased 3 on a, and it's a heightened threat against connected to subversion. And they also said that the risk of sabotage, or the threat of sabotage against the Swedish armed forces, have increased also as a direct consequence of many countries military support to Ukraine, where the Russian side has said since early spring that Russia sees these transports of armed weapons to Ukraine as legitimate military targets for the Russian armed forces. So this is security in a very concrete way. We have to protect the deliveries that are going into to Ukraine, and that we have to do everything that we can do to protect these transports. So if we have the defense industry in the center here, in the form of a Carl-Gustaf recoilless anti-tank weapon, the environment for the defense industry is very, very complex, and we have to think security constantly in order to be operating, really. We have intelligence operations, different forms of criminality, maybe terrorism, subversion, and also the risk of armed conflict and how that will affect the defense industry. But also we have a lot of actors, which is different forms of adversaries, criminals, also competitors, and different forms of ideological actors. All this constitutes sort of the security environment for the defense industry. And on top of that, we have a lot of rules and regulations that we have to comply with. Our own national rules and regulations, but also our customer countries' rules and regulations that we have to adapt and feed into our companies in order to strengthen our protection against all of these other things. So we have to make sort of a protective shell against our companies to make us more secure and not such an easy target for outside parties. We have talked about this, but it's clear that Russia monitors European military activities. And this is important because you can't separate the defense industry and the European military at all, because the defense industry is very connected, very integrated into military forces throughout Europe. So when we say that Russia monitors European military activities, of course they are also monitoring the defense industry's activities, because maybe in some way it's more important for the antagonists to know what will the defense industry deliver in 5 or 10 years from now, because then they can sort of adapt their own production, their own technological advancements in their countries. And the security consequences of Russia's invasion of Ukraine are not temporary. It will remain for the foreseeable future. And we as industries have to really adapt our operations to this new security political environment that we have in Europe and also globally. We have to be better at work more with security, because the invasion is a watershed for European security, and security is more important than ever now, and it will probably become even more important over time. I think that is what it makes so funny to work in this business. I sometimes get yelled at because I just travel around and scaring people. But I will try to be a bit more proactive. There are things you can do personally as an employee within the defense industry, but also as a way for the industries to help the employees to protect themselves. And it's all about reducing the opponent's opportunities, to reducing that circle in the model as much as possible. And it could be things like, how do you express yourself on social media? How do you describe what you work with? You don't have to be very detailed about exactly what you're doing. Or if you're going on a business trip, you don't have to in advance tell the world that you're going to a country on business trip, because an antagonist can of course put the pieces together and realize, oh, maybe that company might have a business opportunity in that country, and then they start puzzling pieces together. You don't want to give those small pieces of information to an opponent. And also, how do you express yourself on Twitter and on Facebook and so on and so on. And it's a lot about maybe not handing out too much personal information about yourself in order to protect yourself, but also protect your employer. And this is not just only connected to working in the defense industry. This is a good protection against other forms of criminality, ransomware attacks and other scams that you can be a target of. So I think behaving a bit more cautioned in social media will increase the security for you as a person in general. And also think about phishing mails. You're probably young people, so you know this by heart, but still, phishing mails is the most potent way to get into computer systems. That is forcing people to click on links or persuading them to clicking links in order to gain access into computer systems. And there are different ways of, it could be smishing or vishing or other forms of, but the bottom criteria is the opponents are getting very, very good at tricking persons to click links, to design emails so that they look like being very legitimate or coming from a legitimate sender. I think another very, very important thing that you can do as a person is to report incidents. When things happen, it could be just a funny feeling in your stomach that, oh, this sounds or feels unnatural. Talk to your security contact, talk to some you trust, and just offload this and document what has happened. Because it is the only way that the security functions within the companies really know about it and can put their pieces together and maybe create a better threat analysis of the company. And also introduce security in meeting agendas. If you are on department meetings or group meetings, always have one meeting topic that says security, because it's a good thing that there will always be a possibility in your work life to talk about security issues. Maybe most of the times there is nothing, and that's fine, but it's a good thing that you're allowed to talk about strange things that have happened, because maybe one day if the same thing has happened but to maybe 3 or 4 persons in the same working group, then you can piece together a threat analysis, maybe directed towards that specific working group, for instance. So it's a good way to talk about this, and just spend a few seconds in your life on critical thinking, whether it's about phishing mails or how you accept new friends on LinkedIn and whatever. Just think 1 second, is this a good idea or not? So raise the threat radar as R2D2 is doing. Another thing is when traveling, if Kenneth, maybe as an intelligence officer, want to recruit someone, want to pitch a contact to someone that I want to recruit, the obvious or the perfect place for making first contact is on a business trip. Because on a business trip, you are outside of your normal habitat, outside the normal security arrangements that you ordinarily have in your workplace. Maybe you come to the hotel, maybe you take a glass of wine in the hotel lobby at the evening, a bit jet lagged maybe. Then that's the perfect place to get the first contact, to start talking to a new person, because then the shields are down a bit and it's easy to make contact. So be aware of that business travel or travel in general is a good way to make contact for the goal of creating or making spies, human operators. When on board, you're always on duty. It's not okay to be the perfect employee between 9 and 5 and then in the evening go to rave club. Because as I said earlier, when you're abroad, it's much more easier to get close to persons. So you have to have your shields up and behave like you're on business trip 24/7. Maybe use travel phones, of course, depending on what country you're going to, because nowadays we keep our entire lives in our phones. This has a lot of me in it. And do you really want to hand over this opportunity to maybe an intelligence organization? Maybe not. So maybe use travel phones or burner phones, for instance, on business trip. But of course, you have to adapt that to the country you're going to. We talked about social media, honey traps. This is a classic way of getting close to persons, using romance as a way to get close to persons. This fictional man Kenneth maybe be standing in a hotel lobby or hotel bar, and suddenly a 22-year-old woman approaches me and starts talking to me, and with the goal of course trying to make me feel acceptable and make me feel young again. And this is a classic way of getting into people's lives and in a way to recruit them. Talk a bit about hotel room safes. Maybe there are different rules in different countries, but in general, hotel room safes aren't secure at all. You have to your assessment has to be that if someone at the hotel or connected to the hotel wants to go into the hotel safes, they can, because you don't control the electronics, you don't control how they are built, you don't control anything about hotel room safes. Maybe you can store computers that are encrypted and totally turned off in them, maybe, but don't use them for storage of telephones and papers and passports and so on, because they aren't safe at all. Is it a good idea to use USB slots for charging your phones or iPads? Of course it's not, because you don't know what's connected behind these sockets, and don't use them at all. Use the normal electricity plug-in that you have. Don't use the USB slots at all. If you really have to use one of these, a data blocker, which allows only for electricity to pass through to the telephone. And that way you ensure that no data connectors within the USB is being used by an opponent. So I think this is an effective way to increase your security if you really have to use USB charging ports that are publicly on public places. How should we have in a work environment? Don't ever discuss company information in public areas, restaurants, airplanes, trains, and taxis, and all, because especially if you live in a country that is one of the big language groups like French, Spanish, German, and English, there is big possibility that there's always someone around that can understand what you're saying. Talk job stuff at the workplace. Put away all the mobile phones and mobile phones when you're talking sensitive stuff at work. Use specifically designed noise boxes or so on to lock in your telephones, or better still, just dump the phones, pick them out of the room, and don't have any phones with you in the room when you talk about secret things. Make sure that persons attending meetings have clearance for the topics that you're going to discuss, so they have the right clearances. Never use received USBs or CDs from external parties in your own computer systems. Never ever do that. Never let guests borrow company computers, for instance, to use their stuff in them. These are, of course, natural things, but it's still worth reminding. And this is part of this awareness rising, because people tend to forget that they are being stressed, and the memories of these quite natural things start to erode over time, because it's very important to constantly try to refreshen these quite easy security steps that you can take. This is just a few things that you as students can think about for your own safety. Take a glass of wine someday and think about these things in the evening. And just make philosophical thoughts about, is my knowledge, things that I know, are they of interest to a hostile actor? If I would put myself in a hostile actor's place and look at me from outside, is the things I know interesting for them? How about my network, people I know, people I work with? Could they be interesting to a hostile state actor or to another form of actor? Is my physical access to buildings and sites and factories, could they be of interest to an external party? Or could my IT access be of importance to an outside actor? Think about these things, especially when you move on in life, in work life, and making your own careers. Constantly think about this. Do I have things in my person that could be of use for an hostile state actor in some way? Is there anything that I can do in my work life or in my life to make it harder for a hostile actor to gather information about you? And I'm not talking about digging a big hole in the ground and put your helmet on and jump into it. I think it's can I change small things to make it more difficult, because we still have to be social people. We still have to have Facebook and LinkedIn and so on. But can I adapt my presence on social media to make it much more harder for them to collect information? And also, do I know who to talk to and report to if an incident occurs? If something happens, do I know who to call? Do I know who to report it to? Do I know how to report it? Which tools should I use, for instance? Think about these things now, but also throughout your careers, because I think just thinking about things makes it more easier to increase security. So, conclusions. This is my last picture. In the defense industry, we work in the business of security policy, military capability, and societal resilience. That is what we do, and we are very connected to our customers, which is in many cases armed forces in different countries. And in order to secure that, we have to protect ourselves as employees, of course, our company. We have to protect our customers. We have to protect our products, and also our legacy and the future company, because things that happen now will have an impact further down the line in the future. So security is very, very much an investment into the future. Security operations rarely creates inflow of cash, but the existence of a security operations within a company is one of the prerequisites for at all delivering products. Because if you would magically make all security disappear in a company, it wouldn't take long before our companies would go very, very bad. Because security is so extremely important in compliance and just securing what we are doing. So it's very much an investment which will have dividends further down the line, which is quite important. And there to the left we have a Gripen flaring against an hostile target. That's it. I'm totally done by now. Thank you very much for listening to me, and maybe we can have some questions. Then I jump out of presentation mode. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. It was very interesting. I'm sure that we are not talking only about the defense industry,
No.
but also about other industries, because we have to also protect business of any company in which we work.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because regardless of the sector you work in, there will always be actors out there trying to steal technology, trying to steal ideas, trying to steal business. So it's not just about defense industry. It's about. But I had sort of the defense industrial thing because it's where I work.
Even if we are talking about the defense, European Defense Challenge, the defense, it's not only defense industry. This is defense of the European economy, businesses, companies, society.
Yes.
So the threats you mentioned about can appear in any company.
Yes.
And
that is a change that has taken place also during the last 5-10 years. That because in the Cold War, security was very, very much about military power and how many bunkers you had, how many tanks you had. That was national security. But nowadays, national security is equally a lot about economic growth, employment, the society is keeping together. That is also national security. So the scope of national security has broadened a lot over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Exactly. That's why when we are talking about defense strategies, we also have to think about, as you said, our products, how we can defend our company from stealing the sensitive information about our products, because in the world we have many competitors and they want to be, maybe they want to deliver cheaper product than ours. So if they know how to do it, they can deliver the similar product cheaper, for example.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to think about this opportunity circle, because it makes it very easy to do we want to hand out opportunities for other actors to steal our information? Yes or no? Probably no. Yeah.
Yes, and you also said that we have to protect our customers. We have manufactured the product, we have delivered the product to our customers, and if the products are not enough safe, somebody can connect to the products, take control of the products, and our customers will have much problems.
Exactly.
So you said that we are not only selling the products, but we also taking care about our customer and about our products when they are in use.
Exactly. I think that is one thing that differs normal industries from the defense industry, is that if Scania sells a truck, then they sell a truck and that's it, more or less. But if defense industry sells a weapon systems, maybe that contract will be in place for 20, 30 years, depending on the system. If you are selling airplanes or submarines, it's a long time spans, which means that we have to have a collaboration over a very long time, and also have security measures to protect information over that long time period also. So that makes it extremely important to work with security.
And also probably it is worth to emphasize that a manufacturer takes responsibility until the end of life for the products which have been sent. So if somebody is using, for example, a car, the car have to be safe. Nowadays we have more and more IT in the cars, and somebody can also somehow take control of the car. So of course defense industry is crucial, but also other products which can be connected from outside somehow can be dangerous for the users.
Yes.
And of course, it is very important to make awareness among employees, what you are talking about. So they need to know what to do, what they should not do, how to behave, because it's also about their work,
exactly,
the company.
and also why we have to introduce security measures. But I think the why is extremely important, because it creates legitimacy for security measures. Because if some security group just demands stuff to the employees, then I think compliance might not be that good. But if you pair it with explaining why are we doing this, why is it important for us to protect our information, then the employees mostly realize this. Oh, that's why. Okay, then I can deal with this two-factor authentication process, for instance. So I think the why is very important.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Kenneth. I would like to ask our audience, maybe you have some questions. I cannot see the questions. I think that your presentation was very clear and you frightened us a little bit.
That was not my intention, but
but it's okay. We will be more careful.
Yes.
And I hope that after this speech, our students can think about different strategies, how to protect products, how to protect companies, how to protect employees from different kind of threats. Because the most important is protect European environment, because we need to develop the society, the economy, improve the economy. So we have to think about many different aspects to sustain in the world. And I see that we have something on chat. Yes, Javier,
Thank you, Javier.
is saying that his eyes are opened now. Okay.
Okay, maybe I can ask one question, Robert Jakubowski. So at the moment in your presentation, we can see that our main enemy at the moment is Russia, when we can expect some attack of our property or some action where they would like to possess very secret information. Yes. By the way, I'd like to ask if our defense industry can look at other countries as the potential enemy. There are some, so how can I say, we can suspect that some other country, of course, China is a special one, and I suppose, could you say about other countries which are at the moment so?
I think there's a lot of countries that can pose a threat. I think we talk a lot about Russia nowadays because of Ukraine, but I think it's equally important, maybe even more important to talk much more about China. But there are other countries also that they are conducting intelligence operations for many reasons, and it could be in a regional context. I'm not sure I want to elaborate on specific countries because I'm talking as a representative of Saab, but Russia and China, and I think it's important to be working in a company. You have to sort of see your company in the context where it operates and look outside. Is there anyone here that can be interested in what we are doing? Or could it be anyone that is interested in stopping what we are doing because that our business interferes with their political goals? And it also varies between different sorts of sectors. It could be one threat when we talk about military issues, but it could be a totally different threat actor when we talk about industry and civil economy. It could be another thing talking about religion. So it's difficult to just hand out a list of actors. I think it depends. But the important thing is have an analysis being done where you work and trying to, as objectively as possible, trying to position your company in a context and look at that context. What is it?
Okay, I understand. And I have next question, yes, because I understand that people should be aware about possible attack of foreign intelligence. For them, they would like to encourage them to cooperation. But I'd like to ask how you protect, how do you think it should be protected, the company in the recruitment system? Then in this process, they can eliminate the spy of foreign intelligence, because I suppose that it's next problem which can appear.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the easy answer is to make background checks on persons that are being employed. And I know that the rules and regulations for doing background checks varies throughout Europe, is different legislation. But the key thing is we have to know who we employ. We have to know that the person we employ doesn't have any vulnerabilities, things that can be exploited, or behavior that can be exploited. And that is not because we think all persons are idiots and potential criminals, but because we have to protect our information, because we live on information. Companies are a big pile of information. That is what a company is, and we have to do what we can to protect them. And one thing is to employ people that we can really trust and that don't have any vulnerabilities. And I think one way to do that is using background checks as much as possible.
Yes, but I suppose that at the moment it's very hard to check everything, because at the moment companies are open for the employee from different countries. For example, we can I can work in your country. From I can so then my impression is that today we try to get a good specialist, but it's very hard to protect the company when we would like to employ people from other countries and fulfill all requirements to be safe.
Yes. I don't have any really good answer. You have to do what you can.
Of course,
and then train and create awareness and on the workplace training and do what you can, and trying to reduce the circle as much as you can, because there aren't any 100% guarantee that we will let spies into our organizations, because the intelligence services are very good, of course, but we have to do what we can. I think just by doing that we get it. But of course the work life and the mobility of workforce in Europe is a challenge, of course, but it's also a good thing, because people moving around creates growth, and our economy is growing, of course. So it's a thing that we have to take height of in the security business, of course.
And do you think that a special
Special
training
trainings
for
are needed.
your employee, how to recognize the person who is especially interested in something, who can be spy, is a good idea?
It is a good idea to. I think there has to be a place in your organization that you can ease your heart to, more or less, and that you have a full trust in, so that the things I tell to the security or incident reporting team really keeps a closed lid on that and doesn't spread it all around. I think that's very important. So legitimacy of the security organization is extremely important, because but I still think it's important to, if you feel something, if something doesn't really add up, if something feels strange, then you really should report it to someone you trust.
Okay.
I think that's important.
I
Because
think that
in most cases you're probably wrong. Maybe it just was a mistake, but once in a while it could be a real thing, and then we have to act on it. Sorry.
And it's okay. And I think that also this is the role of universities to make this awareness of students. We are also having lectures with people who are already working in some companies. So we can discuss also the strategies of discussion about what they are doing, what should not be discussed about, for example. And I think that another important thing is to create a strategy inside the company to, let's say, observe what is going on in the company, to observe the behavior of the people. If suddenly someone is looking in many different databases, searching for something.
And we talked about AI before. I think that will become a big thing, using AI or machine learning to continuously monitoring the computer systems for adverse behavior or strange behavior in the computer nets. I think that will be a big thing to recognize anomalies and variation in activities.
So it means that we can use this modern technology, artificial intelligence, to identify a special strange behavior of what is going on.
At least in the computer world, I think I don't think that we are where AI can sense that in person interaction like this. But in the computer world, then absolutely.
Yes, we have a comment from Javier.
Yes.
As an employee, I understand we should only show certain background, like our capabilities, knowledge, and other information that the company may be interested in, but not much else, like personal or other critical facts, right?
Yes. Trying to balance sort of the information you give. I know that many companies are employing staff to use social media to sort of boost the company's presence on social media, for instance. And of course you can do that, and you should do that, but balance the level of detail in the information you're putting out there. Because when other countries are looking for potential recruiting objects, of course they are looking at social media, of course. And do you want to hand over that opportunity to them to find out that you have been home drunk after the night on town and writing bad things about your boss? That's a bad idea for many reasons, but not at least this creating some sort of compromise or vulnerability. So find your balance in what you are talking about on social media. If you're feeling insecure, talk to someone. If you work at the company, talk to the security staff. How should I express myself? Or if you work at the university, talk to some dean or professor, or just to have some to talk to, because I think security is a lot about group work and working together and asking questions to each other, because we are learning together.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kenneth. I think that we have discussed much about this topic. We have discussed many different challenges which we have in our life. I hope that students will have to think about something. We will have something to think about.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much again. It was very nice to have you here to listen your presentation. And for sure, we will have many interesting proposals from our students. I'm sure of this. Our students who registered for European Defence Challenge, I would like to invite for the next seminar. You can see details on the website. Thank you very much again, and have a nice afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.